Let us stand for a moment of quiet reflection or prayer as you wish. As we are about to take counsel together on matters concerning this county, we should seek to faithfully discharge our duties of office, both in our debate and in our decisions, and promote the health, safety and well-being of those we serve. Thank you. Please be seated. Fellow councillors, officers and members of the public, including those listening in via the webcast, welcome to our council meeting this evening. Before we begin the meeting, I'd like to take this opportunity for us to pay tribute to our recently departed colleague, Councillor Hannah Edwards. Councillor Waller, would you like to lead the tributes?
Thank you very much, Chairman. It is with enormous sadness that I stand here to talk about the loss of our friend and colleague, Hannah Edwards. To lose anyone is sad, but the death of one so young particularly so. I don't want to dwell on the sadness, though. Instead, I want to remember the positive impact Hannah had on those she met. None of us will fail to smile at the memory of Hannah arriving at meetings on her bike, only in the nick of time and with her skirts flying behind her. And how many of us would be wondering what colour highlights she'd have in her hair next time we met her? Or what fancy footwear she'd have, always coordinating with the outfit, I might add. Hannah was a breath of fresh air to this council, but not just sartorially. Here in the chamber and in committee meetings, she asked questions and made suggestions that many of us hadn't even considered. She brought her scientific mind to council papers, reports, and thus improved the outcomes for all. And I would add that in our group meetings, she kept us all on our toes with her insightful comments, couched gently with the phrase, "I might be a newbie, but..." Hannah was hard-working as a councillor and a team player. She always cheerfully offered to substitute for colleagues who couldn't make meetings if her school timetable allowed. Hannah also worked diligently for her residents and was accessible, holding regular ward surgeries. These did not always run smoothly. However, Hannah never let difficult conversations or interactions put her off. She simply kept smiling and kept on going. Her resilience was admirable. Hannah had a life away from the council and away from Oakham School where she worked. And what a full life it was, including, in recent times, throwing herself from an aeroplane. I think they call it parachute jumping. This is even more impressive when you consider that Hannah could be a little accident prone and did, in fact, pick up a minor injury as she landed. She also participated in more sedate, though no less exciting activities, including being part of an international gaming group. It was this sense of fun that led her to these activities, and it is for her sense of fun that we will remember Hannah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waller. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. It is not yet properly sunk in that we've lost Councillor Hannah Edwards as a member of this council, and it is indeed hard to believe that she'll be no longer sitting across there in her seat in this council chamber, nor taking her place on the various committees and working groups on which she served. Speaking on behalf of all the independent councillors, we're truly sad and upset by her loss and extend our condolences to her family and friends. But again, as the leader has said, thinking of Hannah as a person and what she contributed, many of us had only known Hannah since she was elected to this council in May 2023. But in that short time, she'd already earned our respect. From the start, she was prepared to stand up and contribute to debates, which takes courage as a new councillor, and often in her very self-effacing way would preface her comments with, "This may be a stupid question, but..." It was never a stupid question, but one that was well thought through, needed asking, and was frequently a challenge to perceived ways of thinking and the status quo. So thank you, Hannah. We shall miss you. We shall miss your individualism and your intellect, but most of all, your passion and genuine care for Rutland residents and for this county.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. A few months ago, I had the privilege of popping into Hannah's classroom at Oakham School. When I walked in, it is exactly what you would expect from Hannah. Welcoming, vibrant, individual. There was a very clear passion for her subject absolutely all over the classroom. Even I was tempted by physics, which is unheard of. I glanced over at one of her chairs and I saw a pile of very cute, cuddly cats, and I was trying to work out how they were to do with physics. Hannah, as ever, being highly observant, highly sensitive, saw me looking, and she said, well, the thing is, Lucy, occasionally I have pupils who get really, really stressed by their A-levels, and they just give some comfort and calm them down, and it works. That, for me, I thought, is typical Hannah, and like Councillor Powell, a very short time of knowing a remarkable woman. She immediately had spotted a problem, in this case stress, and she was solution focused, and that is what we've seen through her time on this council. And I know certainly for the new Conservative councillors, flying into the Rutland County Council family with another new colleague, I know those shared experiences, shared learning, you will remember forever. And like you, Councillor Powell, we pass our condolences to our Liberal Democrat colleagues, to Hannah's family, to her staff. She was an incredible individual, and I feel very privileged to have had the opportunity, albeit for a short time, to have worked with her. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ross.
Thank you. I first met Hannah in the run-up to the 2023 council elections. She and her husband were friends of Steve here, and we always shared a friendly chat about our difficulties in our campaigning. And we met as three hopeful candidates, and we were successful. As others have mentioned, she was a valued member of the Scrutiny Committee and contributed greatly to the recent work that was done by Councillor Stevenson on flooding. We also were in fairly regular contact on issues that impacted our constituents in Oakham, and I know that she attached a great deal of importance to supporting her constituents in whatever way she could. I think we all knew Hannah as a busy and very committed lady, balancing her role as a physics teacher at Oakham School with that of a councillor. What some of you may not know is that she was a qualified pilot and had the very rare privilege of having piloted a Spitfire, something I'm certain that we would all envy. She was a lady of many talents, and she will be greatly missed.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. We'll leave the final word to Councillor Chatfield, her fellow ward member.
Thank you. I met Hannah in April 23 when she and I became candidates for the council elections. We met by the railway crossing in Oakham. Have our pictures taken by Stephen. Election leaflet. Getting actually elected, I think, was a big surprise for both of us. And our first full council meeting was a strange, bewildering experience. It still is a bit. We soon started to settle down into our roles, Hannah quicker than me, and got on with our new member induction sessions and going to our assigned committee meetings. One thing Hannah did extremely well was interacting with our ward residents. She had no problem cycling off to meet anyone who had a local issue and always did her best to find a solution for them. She had an almost religious fervour for this aspect of the job, although she'd be horrified of me describing it as anywhere as religious. She also had a demanding job and time-consuming job at physics teacher at Oakham School and did a lot of private tutoring. aside from this, she had a wicked sense of humour. And for her to depart this world at the age of 39 is an enormous tragedy. It makes me very sad to have to refer to her in the past tense. She'll be missed.
Thank you. Sorry. Now we'll move to the agenda proper. So, have we any apologies this evening?
Chair, we received apologies from Councillors Beggy, Brown, Brown, Ellison, Smith and West. Therefore, councillors voting to 21 this evening.
Thank you. Chairman's announcement. Since the last ordinary meeting of Council, I or the Chairman have attended the following civic engagements. The Chair represented RCC at the funeral service for Maggie Gover, who was the volunteer driver at Voluntary Action Rutland for many years, the Rutland Memorial Hospital Fund Day, flag raising for Merchant Navy Day in the grounds of Oakham Castle, and the service to mark the anniversary of the Ascension of King Charles III at All Saints Church, Oakham. Item 3 is announcements from the Leader, members of Cabinet or the Head of Paid Service. I'll invite the Leader, Councillor Waller, to address Council.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I have attended a couple of outside bodies since we last met, but very recently, and therefore notes of these will be circulated with the minutes. They are now written, but they weren't written in time for prior circulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the Cabinet who wish to speak at all? No, thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest at all this evening, members? No, thank you. Now, we have minutes of the previous meeting. As a reminder, members should abstain from voting on minutes of meetings they did not attend. As I wasn't present for the previous meeting, could I ask a member to please move the minutes of the 15th of July? Thank you, Councillor Waller. And could I also ask for a seconder of those minutes, please? Thank you, Councillor Powell. All those in favour of the minutes being approved, please raise your hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That's 18.
Thank you. And abstentions?
3, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. So now we have item 6, petitions, deputations and questions from members of the public. We have received one question. It's been received from Gillian Aitken. Gillian, welcome. Thank you for your question. Could we please ask you to ask your question? You'll have a button. Councillor Mark Robb, could you?
Yes, I see that.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, so can everyone hear? Yeah. Good evening, Chairman and members of the general public. My question here this evening is what due diligence is in place by Rutland County Council regarding the operation of the shared building control services operated by Blaby Council, in particular to ensure compliance with health and safety and building regulations?
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Brown, I believe you're answering, please.
I am, thank you. Thank you for the question, Ms. Aitken. Rutland County Council Building Control Service became a member of the Leicestershire Building Control Partnership in April 2022, joining 5 other councils who were already operating that partnership. Although delegation occurred in April 2022, shared service working arrangements were actually being provided from early as August, September 2021. Legal agreements and the governance frameworks are in place, which have been signed by all partner legal departments and CEOs of each council, and joint 6 monthly partnership meetings take place, whereby a member of the senior leadership team at Rutland will attend to ensure that the building control partnership is performing as it should be in the terms of service delivery, costs and expectations. Leicestershire Building Control Partnership, this is the way you are concerned, is audited by both Council's internal audit team and by the local authority Building Control's external audit team, and will likely be audited by the Building Safety Regulator, who falls within the Health and Safety Executive, in addition to any other key performance indicators and reports or reportable performance statistics that they may request. All building control councils providers must adhere to provide a building control service that seeks to work within the legislation available within this area of work, such as the Building Act of '84, building regulations in force at the time of submission stage, and the recent Building Safety Act of 2022. In addition, the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, which is just another example. All any complaints received that relate to building control will be dealt with in accordance with this council's standard complaints policies, and complainants have the option to escalate matters to the local government ombudsman should they not be happy with the outcome of any decision made following on these service complaints.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. Would you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Yes. I think it's related. If it's not, please stop me. In the event of gross misconduct and negligence within the Building Control Department, who would be liable? Rutland County Council or Blaby Council?
Councillor Brown.
You say in negligence?
Yes.
Negligence of the... Sorry?
It's not necessarily a question that can be answered at this stage. It would depend on so many factors. So it's a very general question, really. If there are particular concerns about an individual case, that might not be a matter for council here tonight.
Yes. Which proves gross misconduct and negligence.
I'd suggest that's not a matter for council here tonight.
Yes.
We have a complaints procedure which can be accessed via the website if you have a matter that you would like to raise, and that will be picked up at that stage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for your question. Agenda item 7 is questions from members of the council. We'll take the questions as they've been received from members, as they've in the order they've been received. So, Councillor Corby, can you ask your question as submitted to Councillor Smith?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The recent performance report for Q1 24-25 highlighted that only 6 of 33 education, health and care plans had been completed within the 20-week time frame, equating to 18% of a 90% target. Clearly this is of concern to us as councillors, but most importantly to the parents and carers of those children waiting for an assessment. Can you please confirm that the remedial measures put in place have had the desired effect, and what are the current figures relating to EHCP completion?
Thank you. As Councillor Smith is not present, I believe, Councillor Waller, that you will be providing a response.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I am going to respond due to Councillor Smith's serious illness. Councillor Corby, can I start by thanking you for your question? I'd like to say, or I'd like to explain, that RCC is not totally in charge of our own fate over the timeliness of the production of the education, health and care plans. For example, schools contribute to these, but if it's a school holiday period, the schools aren't available, for example. Having said that, though, we did start this quarter with a backlog due to staff shortage during the autumn term of 2023. And this was caused by staff leaving or taking up new positions within our organisation. And this affected the statistics in January 2024. However, the percentage has been slowly increasing. Agency staff have been allocated to support with this work, and there is now a full team trained and able to support going forward. The delay was also contributed to by the lack of capacity for educational psychologist face-to-face assessments. And we're working with our providers of the Education Psychology Service to ensure that capacity is increased. We've also created a system of triage, so those that were able to be completed remotely, and I did mention the face-to-face previously, were carried out remotely, and this helps with educational psychology assessments being completed. In August, in August, the statistics for the year has now risen to 23%. That is 11 out of 47 completed in the year, within the 20-week timescale. In August alone, 44% of EHCPs were within the statutory timeframe. So the statistics for the year as a whole should continue to rise. Between January and June 2024, whilst only 16% were completed within the statutory timescale of 20 weeks, a further 41% were completed within 21 to 30 weeks. Currently, approximately 20 out of 40, i.e. 50% of the assessments are on track. At the recent parental collaboration group, we explored whether parents would prefer the SEND team to prioritise a complete holistic assessment and plan, or one that is completed with less information but meets the 20-week timescale. All thought that parents would prefer the former, so long as the reasons for the delay were explained clearly to parents. All agreed that it's preferable a placement be named as opposed to a type of placement, even if this meant a delay. I would add that the SEND service has only had 2 complaints for the whole of this year that refer to timescales, and one of those was linked to the annual review, not the initial assessment and delivery of an EHCP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waller. Councillor Corby, do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I do, and it may have been answered there by Councillor Waller, but I was going to ask, there were also issues at that time relating to placement. It might be a bit unfair because Councillor Smith's not here, but I just wondered if there's an update on the issues relating to placement of these young people.
I don't think that would be classed as a supplementary. I don't know. I'll just check with
I believe, yeah, if it's related to the matter, and Councillor Waller.
Thank you. I will.
Yeah, thank you. I can't give you a full and detailed answer to your question in terms of how many were related to it and so forth, because clearly it is Councillor Smith's portfolio, not mine. What I can tell you is that delays are often caused about placement, because clearly parents have the right to express a preference. The actual placements themselves, the schools have a view on whether a young person can be placed or not. And if the school's on holiday, they're not going to give their view, so a delay gets built in. So that's why there are delays often. It's not because the council can't find anywhere, it's the matching the placement with the young person and their needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waller. Thank you, Councillor Corby. We'll just let our... Councillor Powell, can you ask your question as submitted to Councillor Johnson?
Thank you. At the full council meeting on 26th of February, this council approved the budget for 24-25 and a number of other recommendations, which included the fees and charges strategy at Appendix E. This strategy states that all fees and charges should be reviewed annually unless agreed otherwise, brackets, such as parking fees that are set 3 yearly. I was therefore surprised to see that car parking charges were increased this summer with effect from the 3rd of June 2024, when the last increase agreed by this council was in 2022. Please can the portfolio holder explain why the fees and charges strategy decision made in good faith by this council was not actually implemented as it was presented to us in the papers? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I thank Councillor Powell for her question and the opportunity to clarify. The Council's parking policy, which can be found on the Rutland County Council website, states that, quote, parking charges will be reviewed annually during a review of the Council's wider fees and charges, unquote. It is true that it has tended to be custom and practice that car parking fees are increased every 3 years in order that the increases are cost effective. This was the intention when budget was prepared and published, as fees were last increased in 2022. However, given the inflationary inheritance from 2023 and the fast emerging budgetary pressures in 2024-25, it was decided that it was appropriate to review parking charges early in 2024-25 in order to maximise revenue. Councillor Powell will be aware that the Council is facing extreme pressures on its finances. To be fiscally responsible, decisions necessary to balance the budget need to be made during the budget year, and the administration has the flexibility to do this. I have no doubt that Councillor Powell would expect us to deliver the budget within our funding envelope, and we are taking the necessary steps to do so.
Councillor Powell, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. I'm not disagreeing with Councillor Johnson about the fiscal challenges faced by this council and the need to make sure that we maximise our income. My question was about the principle in a budget paper presented to this council, which we voted on, and a fees and parking strategy where it clearly stated that they would be increased they would be reviewed and set every 3 years, that the decision to actually increase them this year, for whatever reasons, did not come back to this full council, which I would have expected if we were going to do anything different to what was agreed at this full council meeting. So my supplementary is, can I just confirm my understanding that the paper approved by this council was not actually implemented as it was presented to this council in February 20 this year, February 24?
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. If we were to come back to this council and ask for approval in every single operational budget change, we'd be here every day of the week as a council. As I'm sure she's aware, the operational requirements of operating something like a council with an £81 million budget require that the budget plan has to be varied often from the first day of the budget year. We could illustrate, I've no doubt, various examples where the plan has not been followed exactly, and the costs and the actions are different to those presented in budget. Budget is an intention, it's a plan, it is not a policy. And I believe, and I'm advised, that the council has acted, the administration has acted in accordance with procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Hemsley, can you ask your question as submitted to Councillor Waller, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. We are all working for the best outcome for Rutland, but I have again found that ward residents are more informed about RCC activities than I am. If we are to be effective, we need to address this failure in information sharing. There are many, many examples of this. I'm just going to mention 3. Firstly, the transformation work. I'm finding out jobs are being merged and departments then needing to shed staff. Whilst I understand the complications with when to share, but a high-level view would be useful, as I find it discourteous and potentially embarrassing when looking blankly at said employee. Secondly, we have a budget for a flooding officer which was fiercely protected at our budget meeting. Could we please have an update on this recruitment process? And finally, members' queries. I have never been a supporter of this, however, I do understand why we have it. I have spoken with other members as well, just to check it was not me. The efficiency of it is the issue we have. Concerns. As an elected representative for the residents, we should be treated as part of the organisation, as we are here to help promote RCC in our communities. So, when will we have robust and open communications with elected members and the executive, led by the leadership from the top? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Waller.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your question, Councillor Hensley. The transformation programme was initiated under the previous administration and at the time of initiation was supported by a cross-party project board. The need to embark on transformation was driven by both the desire to improve services and to make significant budget savings. And it was clear from the outset that this would lead to some reorganisation and some redundancies. That is, redundancies of posts, not necessarily people, because the detail wasn't available at that stage. The transformation programme is a challenging programme with the significant budget savings required, and detailed exploration of all potential options have been ongoing throughout the last year, 18 months. This includes viable delivery structures which cannot be confirmed in detail until all relevant HR processes have been completed. What detail can be provided has been highlighted regularly through the member briefings that we all get, and most recently noted in the HR brief on the 10th of July. Additionally, since becoming leader, I have regularly updated group leaders on the progress of this work, and at their request, an all-member briefing on transformation was organised for last week. Unfortunately, due to staff sickness, it had to be postponed and will now be held in this room on the 29th of October. I'm sure, Councillor Hensley, that you will appreciate that when you're dealing with staffing issues and redundancies generally, that there has to be a level of confidentiality. And at group leaders meetings, I have shared all that I have known. Thank you. On your second point about the flood risk officer, the recruitment process went live on the 2nd of September this year. The closing date for this job is next week, specifically the 29th of September, and interviews will be taking place in early October. On your third point, the target response times for members' queries is 10 days. There are times when it's not possible to achieve this, depending on complexity and staffing constraints. If members, and I would add, if members are not getting a response within 10 days and have not had an explanation as to why, could you please let me or your group leaders know, and I'm sure if the group leaders are getting complaints, they will convey this to me in our regular group leaders meetings. Thank you.
Councillor Hemsley, do you have a supplementary?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8 is referral of committee decisions to the... Oh, sorry, Councillor Stevenson. You're right. You do have a question for Councillor Johnson. I apologise.
I thought we'd run out of time, Chair.
No, we hadn't.
Oh,
I apologise.
No problem. Thank you. A question to Councillor Johnson. I note on the 10th of September, Cabinet approved the funding of the Low Income Family Tracker, LIFT, an online benefits calculator and an additional resource to target support to low-income households. With approximately 20,800 people across the Rutland and Stamford constituency losing their winter fuel payments, can the portfolio holder for governance and resources assure Council our impacted pensioners will be supported to access this online tool. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
I thank Councillor Stevenson for her question and for providing me with an opportunity to focus on the excellent and timely initiatives the Liberal Democrat administration have put into action. This initiative is not related to recent announcements about winter fuel payments, but is indeed timely. The discussions on the topic of helping residents maximise their benefit claims dates back to conversations I was having with the Director of Resources as long ago as January of this year. One of our Lib Dem defined corporate priorities is to support the most vulnerable. This initiative is at the core of this priority and we are very proud of it. We have estimated that residents of Rutland are not claiming some £5 million worth of benefits to which they are entitled. The initiative that we brought forward and approved in Cabinet is to use the Low Income Family Tracker in conjunction with an enhanced online benefits calculator, which will allow us to proactively target households in Rutland that are not claiming these benefits and could do so. This initiative will be managed as a 2-year pilot project to proactively identify and contact households who are not eligible for benefits, who are eligible for benefits but are not claiming them. The LIFT is not a tool that can be accessed directly by individuals as it contains data that we cannot share. It does not use the same data as other organisations can currently access, for example, Citizens Advice. I'm pleased to say that our first campaign will focus on unclaimed pension credit, which gives entitlement to the winter fuel allowance. Time is obviously of the essence and we have arranged a kick-off meeting for the project next week. During November, we will aim to dispatch letters to those households we identify are entitled to pension credit but are not claiming it. We will undertake follow-up work, including face-to-face support if needed, all ahead of the application deadline of the 21st of December, to ensure that these applications receive the winter fuel payment. Thank you.
Councillor Stevenson, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. No, that was very reassuring, and I look forward to some feedback and uptake on that and to measure success. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to item 8, referral of committee decisions to the Council, of which there is none. There's also item 9, call-ins. There is no call-ins for consideration. And next we have item 10. We only have one report from Cabinet this evening, just a small one. Councillor Brown. If you would like to introduce your small report and propose the few recommendations, that would be fantastic.
Thank you, Chair. I trust all my colleagues have read through the 600 pages that has been put forward. However, I'll try and cut this down, but it's not going to be easy. This is the formal request for approval of the 4 recommendations to Council concerning the subsequent process of dealing with the pre-submission local plan, which is generally termed Regulation 19. Should the recommendations before you be approved, this represents a significant stage of the evolution of our emerging local plan, which is designed to conduct our planning policy until 2041. This follows the consultation process known as Regulation 18, the importance of which was clearly embraced by many interested parties and resulted in over 3,400 separate points being raised and dealt with by our officials. Responses to all such points are contained on our website. I wish to record my and I feel sure all other members here tonight to thank our officers for their diligent analysis of those responses and for arriving at this final analysis and distillation of those many comments into this detailed and comprehensive plan that is now before us. It has been truly a mammoth task for them. An approval this evening allows this draft to go forward for publication to facilitate a further public consultation of 6 weeks, which will straddle next October to December. This allows for further representations by any interested party to be made on the plan as a whole. The document, unless significantly and unforeseen issues arise, is then submitted for independent examination in public, which is termed Regulation 22. Subject to the same achieving the standard required by the examiner, the plan, together with any further recommendations by the examiner, are then incorporated into the plan and will revert to this council for final approval before going for ministerial approval. Those processes are more specifically covered and detailed in the recommendations in the documents you have. Whilst I'm sure the following is going to be appreciated by attending councillors, I'd like to explain to all those members of the public listening or indeed attending in this chamber that this consultation invites comments on the plan as a whole. The question is whether they think the entirety of this proposed draft local plan is sound and reasonable. It is emphatically not a rerun of the Regulation 18 process, which invited comments on each and every aspect of the details within the proposed plan. The opportunity for making those alternative suggestions was only at Regulation 18 stage, and that has now passed. This stage and those previous and future stages are all stipulated by statute and have been reached after a long and expensive process of analysing all aspects of the planning process and procedures, and will ultimately provide a fundamental change and redirection of a large cohort of policies from those in our extant and now well out of date plan. Although those statutory stages will not be completed for some time, by passing these recommendations tonight, the contained policies gain in an immediate level of weight in assessing all future planning applications. The power and level of such weighting then increases incrementally with achievement of each of the following stages. So the vote tonight is important for that reason alone. It was pleasing to see that 50% of the responses, over 50% in actual fact, of the responses in Regulation 18 contained favourable comments. However, there was one recurrent theme of misunderstanding that emerged concerning what the plan says about development in small villages and hamlets. This was repeatedly raised in a pretty well uniform format, which indicates
Councillor
some
Brown,
level...
you have 7 seconds to wrap up your
Sorry?
You have 7 seconds to wrap up your introduction.
Really?
Or we can move to extend your time.
I would like to move to extend. It is an important matter.
Okay.
I'm very happy to second because it is an absolute necessity to hear everything from the portfolio holder.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chair.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
However, there's one and that concerned what the plan says about development in small villages and hamlets. The issue was repeatedly raised in a pretty well format. Oh, sorry, I apologise. But I think it is therefore reasonable to refer to this specific concern in this presentation. The concern hinges on what is termed planned limits of development, not being imposed on such settlements, which, to avoid misunderstanding, are individually named settlements and mentioned in Policy SS1. In former years, they were designated as restraint villages, which provided that not only limited development could take place, but also for affordable housing. However, that designation is no longer compatible with the National Planning Practice Guidance, which clearly states a wide range of settlements can play a role in delivery of sustainable development in rural areas. So blanket policies that restrict such housing development in same type settlements will need to be supported by robust evidence. Our earlier issues and options consultation also produced responses from such villages, settlements, indicating a need for a more flexible approach to allow small-scale developments to meet identified housing needs within their community. In response to the National Planning Guidance and the said consultation, your council has developed a criteria-based approach that will allow for small-scale infill, redevelopment of existing properties, and the rounding off of existing developments. The matter is dealt with in detail in Policy SS3. It makes clear direction that any development would have to be small-scale, usually 1 or 2 properties, although there is an exception up to 5 in exceptional circumstances. Any such development would have to be compatible with the existing settlement, both in scale, density, and character. Plus, and this is key, the applicant has to demonstrate clear, substantial community support, the support of the parish council or town council, or under the neighbourhood plan, and evidence of such support would have to be submitted with the application. That is a major change. In addition, by Policy S3, settlements will be technically fall within the definition of development within the countryside, which supports new and further detailed criteria, Policy SS7. Therefore, unlike areas with PLDs, where the principle for residential development within the boundary of the PLD is essentially given, this will not be the case for such small villages under this plan, where each application will have those defined restrictions to cope and comply with. I hope this detailed explanation will therefore assuage the misinformation that has been clearly promoted throughout this case. The elephant in the room, out to everything I have said, is what effect our new government's policies will be as contained in their new NPPF, which, following consultation, closure of consultation, should be published in this coming December and January, and which becomes effective 1 month from that publication. On the basis of their currently proposed amendments to the methodology of calculating our local housing need.
Sorry, Councillor Brown, can you pause for just 1 minute? Can we vote again for Councillor Brown to have an extension, another extension, please? Can we, if everyone's in favour, I propose and we can all vote unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Sorry, Councillor Brown, if you continue for another 5 minutes,
Thank
please.
you. I will hopefully have concluded. This would result in an increase of delivery of 123 new homes per annum up to 264. This will have a fundamental impact on Rutland. However, because we have stuck rigidly to the timetable we have imposed on the conduct of the current procedures, despite concerted and organised opposition requesting extensions of consulting periods, we now have the benefit of certain presently indicated transitional arrangements that the government has initially recognised as being fair and reasonable and necessary to those authorities in the same position as ourselves. If this guidance remains unaltered, it is likely that our plan can proceed on its projected path under the present regulations, and the level of 123 could well be continued through this process. However, we cannot be sure that this will remain the position. The new NPPF will be the determining factor. What could well happen is that whilst our new plan lawfully says 123 per annum, the new mandatory rules could give us a figure of 264. It's a somewhat bizarre situation where two lawfully arrived at figures would apply to the same situation, showing a differential of 114%. How long that differential will be tolerated will also likely to be decided by this government. It is therefore prudent to start thinking of further but partial review of certain aspects of this policy before this currently proposed plan eventually becomes formalised. basically to start just as soon as this new mandatory requirements are published, but we are already decided to start a project plan to commence forthwith. Excuse me. The Council therefore has two options tonight: to vote for the recommendation or oppose them. The former will mean that the plan goes forward through the necessary stages up to possibly early 2037 before finally approved. This could mean that our figure figure of 123 is maintained, possibly even to the end. A vote against it would mean that we would have no update plan, and the consequences are that firstly, we would have to start completely all over again with the new plan this time under the new rules. The cost, well, if anything goes by what it is now, will be at least 2 million, which we don't have. Secondly, our currently healthy 5-year housing supply of 7.6 would reduce automatically to 3.7 from some date in January. We would then be again at the mercy of predatory developers as we were in 2021-22, with the dire results which our residents would not appreciate. Thirdly, we'll lose all the other policies in the draft plan that have received so much approval from residents. I apologise for the length of my speech, but these are difficult and undefined times, which need to be understood and made clear as far as we can, and I believe are fundamental to your considerations on how to vote tonight. I therefore propose that all the recommendations listed in the report before you are now approved. I apologise for the delay.
That's all right. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Waller. I will now open up for debate. Anyone? Councillor Ross, beat you to it. It's Councillor Ross, and then Councillor Powell.
Sorry. So we are supportive of the plan as drafted for the reasons that were outlined by Councillor Brown to stop a Wild West developing in developments in the county. We also welcome the fact that we will be looking at both St George's Barracks and Woolfox in our planned refresh of this local plan, which is required to meet the government's new housing target, and that this council should prioritise these sites, and in particular St George's Barracks as a brownfield site. We would ask that, given the poor economic performance of this county in the recent past, that as a council we work hard to attract businesses that provide high quality jobs in the employment land that has been allocated in this plan. Finally, we would express the hope that government will adopt the proposals that it has outlined in its recent consultation on the new policy planning framework, insofar as these relate to the increased availability of affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Powell.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to congratulate officers and everybody who's been involved in the production of this new local plan. As we can see, it is a very lengthy tome and one that has taken a lot of work to pull together. So I think everyone involved deserves credit for running this. I think it's over 600 pages plus all the evidence. I do remember back when I was first elected looking at the previous local plan, which eventually wasn't adopted. That was pretty lengthy, but I think that was 200 pages plus quite a few extras. So it obviously has expanded considerably, and I'm glad I've got it online now rather than in a weighty volume. So I believe we're supportive of this plan. We now have some really good updated policies, which will, as Councillor Brown says, will become more robust as the process proceeds. The other significant difference from the last plan was that we've now formalised that the Rutland allocation of the 650 houses relating to the Stamford North development. When I was portfolio holder for planning in 2022, the key priority was for this plan to develop apace and to get it done within as short and reasonable time scale but obviously doing all the due diligence along the way, and to involve all members in those discussions through members' briefings. So a very rigid timetable. So I'm very pleased that the current administration have actually built on this approach and actually have now we've actually delivered it in a timely fashion. That was always the risk, that it would drag and that members wouldn't feel fully informed about what was going on. I think this has been aided and greatly supported by the cross-party working group, the local plan working group, which is, as I say, cross-party, but a sort of collaborative way of actually making sure that we've discussed those some of the issues that they've gone along within that group. And as you know, in this small council, I truly believe that we actually should be working collaboratively across all councillors, drawing on all members' experience, so that we're all sort of bought into the decisions made, and that makes for really good decision making, I think, for this council. And I think that this is part of the proof that this approach works. And we now, as Councillor Brown finds ourselves in, I think we find ourselves in the best possible position in terms of where we're placed now with the changes with the new government, which we have no control over. We'll have to wait and see. But I think we're supporting this plan now puts us in the best possible position we could be in to face the next stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Corby.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got a few comments to make with regard to the strategic policy H2, cross-boundary opportunity, Stamford North. Probably nobody surprised to hear me say this. First of all, I must comment on the recent Cabinet decision to exclude Brook Road from the housing allocation. Not because Brook Road should not have necessarily been retained as an allocated site, but for all of those other residents that had taken the time to comment on the other allocated sites during the Regulation 18 consultation
Sorry,
process.
Councillor Corby, just for a second.
Chair, what members have to say today must relate to the recommendations of the report, and the matter being debated today is whether or not to refer the draft local plan for consultation.
That's fair.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll start off by saying quite clearly I'm going to support the recommendations in the paper, and I'd like to thank the portfolio holder for a necessarily long introduction to this. There are a couple of points that I would like to emphasise, which I think is supportive, Councillor Brown, and then just one query which you may not be able to answer here, and I may be inaccurate in some of the bits that I've got through from a sort of national what's on the horizon. First of all, the point that you made about the consultation being about the plan in its entirety, I think should absolutely be underscored. I think this council hopefully will have learned its lessons from the previous local plan. It's cost us about 2 million, but hopefully we've learnt our lesson that a single issue, however passionately we feel about it, cannot derail a document that is so important for the future of Rutland. And I absolutely want to emphasise that point, and I do hope all members will demonstrate we've learned our lessons from that. The second point that I would like to make is about this transition period. Clearly, we have got huge housing numbers on the horizon, courtesy of the new Labour government, who do seem to be slightly more urban focused. Is that being naughty, Chair? I don't know. I'll keep an eye on you. They seem to be less keen on supporting rural areas. Presumably, when we do that refreshment, we will need to think very carefully about our spatial strategy covered in Chapter 5, and I really hope that members will have the opportunity to debate that perhaps informally, but that spatial strategy in light of those new housing numbers will be crucial to get consensus moving forwards. And then this is my question, which may not be to do with the recommendation, so I'm keeping an eye. Apparently, the new National Planning Policy Framework will be suggesting that there must be 40% affordable homes on any development over 10 dwellings. Apparently, this may actually call the viability of sites into question. So I'm assuming our planning officers will be fully aware of that potential, but I would like to flag that up now in the public domain. And I think that's covered me off. I'll sit down, Chair. Thank you.
I think, Chair, that was a comment rather than a question.
I think so.
I felt it was very commenty, Chair.
Yeah, I felt very commenty rather than questioning. Any other? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank Councillor Brown for his efforts and his explanation about the smaller villages and the protections now afforded in the local plan to smaller villages. As I'm aware, there's been a lot of concern about this in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Waller.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to echo what Councillor Johnson's just said. I think he was spot on there, except Councillor Brown's not listening to the compliment I'm giving him. But I'd also like to support Councillor Stevenson's comment, which I think is something both our officers will be concerned about, and I certainly will be raising at every opportunity that I have, starting with East Midlands Council's executive tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waller. Any other? No? Oh, Councillor Heckles.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to thank Roger Ransom for all of his hard work getting this local plan together. I think some of the officers are never quite recognised for all the hard work that they do.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If there's no further debate, then we will move the motion. So the motion is that Council approves the recommendations listed in section 1.2 of report 101/2024. So I would ask all those in favour, please raise your hands.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. That motion is carried. Thank you. Now we go to item 11, which is reports from the committees of the Council. We've got one report from the Conduct Committee this evening. Councillor Hemsley, as Chair of the Committee, can you introduce the report and propose the It's Councillor Johnson, is it?
So, as the chair of the committee, Councillor Hemsley has the first right to propose a motion, but he can allow for another member of the committee to do so.
I'm happy to let Councillor Johnson. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson, would you like to introduce?
I thank Councillor Hemsley for his unequivocal nomination. Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce this item, which comes on the recommendation of the Conduct Committee and deals with the revised arrangements for dealing with member conduct complaints. The Localism Act 2011 requires the Council to promote and maintain high standards of conduct. The Council must also agree arrangements under which allegations that a member or co-opted member of the Council or of a town or parish council within its area has failed to comply with the relevant code of conduct can be investigated and decisions made on such allegations. The current arrangements were approved by Council in April 2022. And on the 10th of September 2024, revised arrangements were presented to the Council's Conduct Committee for consideration in the report, which is appended to this report. The committee unanimously agreed to recommend the revised arrangements for approval, subject to several further amendments which have been incorporated into Appendix A. The recommendation incorporates a number of housekeeping and other improvements to the arrangements, and the main changes are as follows. Firstly, the introduction of an initial assessment intended as a triage. This is a 21-day period within which it will be decided whether the matter is a valid member conduct complaint. Secondly, subject members will not be notified of the complaint until after the initial assessment and a decision has been made to accept the complaint. Thirdly, insertion of the definition of a fact-finding exercise where further inquiries are necessary, but it doesn't constitute a full investigation. And last, the removal of the obligation on the monitoring officer to inform the police if the allegation involves suspected criminal conduct, as it's not always necessary or the monitoring officer has to be the informant. Members will realise that this type of arrangement will normally be updated and improved from time to time. Thank you. Chair, I'm not sure if you want me to move the motion at this point, but if you want me to, I can.
Yes, if you would move it, please.
I'll move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Hemsley, would you like to second the motion?
Good, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. And then we shall open to debate. I can see you're all rushing to debate this. No, you're all happy. Shall we move straight to the vote? Oh, Councillor Powell rushing in there.
No, I'm happy. I thought I'd just say, I think it's been debated by the Conduct Committee and we've all read it, so I'm quite happy with these proposals.
Excellent. We shall move. Councillor Johnson, do you want to come back, or shall we move to the? We'll move to the vote. So I will ask all those in favour if you would like to raise your hands, please. Thank you.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much, everyone. Item 12 is reports from scrutiny. I don't think we have any reports from scrutiny this evening. Thank you, Councillor Ross. Item 13 is joint arrangements and external organisations. We have a number of reports that have been received, and they'll be taken in the order they were received. Councillor Ross, I think you were first. Do you want to speak to any of your reports?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. So there are two items to add to the LLR HOSC report before you this evening that were initiated following the meeting and the report that you have before you. The first one relates to appointment availability at GP surgeries. Healthwatch Leicestershire and Rutland have agreed to undertake a research project focused on the issue of access to GP practices. I think that's a very useful initiative. Secondly, there was data provided on access to NHS dental care as this relates to children up to age 17. The data that has been provided highlights that only 38% of Rutland children accessed NHS dental care in the 6 months to December 2023, which compares with a regional average of 66%. In addition, access is lowest for all age bands in Rutland, and it is uniformly poor. And I will circulate this data to all councillors after this meeting. Can I, unless there are questions, are there any questions on that report?
No, but can I just clarify that HOSC stands for the Joint Health Scrutiny Committee? That's perfectly fine,
sorry,
but
yes.
I'll just clarify that.
Sorry. Are there any questions on the report as presented, and with those further 2 points? In which I'll go on to the Anglian Northern Region Flood and Coastal Committee. Just one update that the new Environment Minister has sensibly agreed to the Environment Agency's request for the use of available capital funds in respect of immediate maintenance and repair activities. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Councillor Karen Payne, do you wish to speak to your report regarding the Heidelberg Materials Liaison Committee?
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly to say it is a very well-run business, and the Environment Agency will support this. Emissions are low and very well within tolerance, and they are being very innovative in piloting a new carbon capture trial, and investment in the business in terms of new equipment and reducing emissions even further is ongoing. The rest of it you can read in my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Payne. Do we have any questions for Councillor Payne? No, thank you. Councillor Wise. Do you wish to speak to any of your reports? Sorry.
I seem to write rather a lot of them, and I send them in very late because I only had one of the meetings, I think, yesterday. So if anybody has any questions, I'd rather you ask me rather than me go through them all in some detail. The one thing I would like to mention is, you will notice I raised at the Police and Crime Commissioner panel the loss of our Oakham beat officer. I am at our officer was meeting the Police and Crime Commissioner today. I did warn the Police and Crime Commissioner we would be asking further questions about that, and I'm at another meeting on tomorrow where if I haven't had a positive reply by midnight tonight, I will be raising again that we've lost our Oakham beat officer. It seems ludicrous to me that our county town doesn't have its own beat officer. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Waller, do you want to come in on that point?
I would like to come in on that point, if I may, just to update members, including the portfolio holder, whom I haven't had a chance to have a conversation with this evening. But late this afternoon, I had a meeting with the Police and Crime Commissioner, and this matter was raised, and I did get an explanation as to the root cause of the problem. That is not to say it has been solved. However, Oakham will get a new beat officer, but the Police and Crime Commissioner wasn't able to give me a date. The full context of the conversation I will provide for all members at some point, probably over the weekend, because I'm rather tied up tomorrow, but I promise you I will send out a full explanation.
Yeah, I will say I did see a press release from the Chief Constable yesterday as well on the matter as well. I think that would be, he did issue a press release yesterday. Thank you. I've nothing to add with regard to my two reports, so if members have got questions on that, I'll happily take them, but if not, I'll take all reports as received and notice unless there are any further questions from members. No. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 14, which is notices of motion. There is no notices that have been received. So we're on to item 15, which is the revised bus service improvement plan. This is report number 103/2024 in our packs. Members will note that the bus service improvement plan is before us for adoption as part of the local transport plan. However, as members will see from the report that the BSIP has already been submitted to government, members should be assured that the situation is not unique to Rutland County Council and is a result of the strict timelines set by central government. However, we still have a requirement for Council to formally adopt the BSIP. We'll just wait for Roger to go. Safe journey home, Roger. Councillor Wise, can I ask you to introduce the report and propose a motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. You've actually stolen most of my first paragraph, but as I've got it written, you're getting it again. Important to appreciate, this is a refresh of an existing BSIP that was written into 2021, and this refresh had to be prepared against a tight timeline and during significant staff changes. It is a credit to all involved that it was completed to a revised time schedule and led to the release of £486,280. Can't miss the 80. The reason for this document has come to Council is the local transport plan, which includes the BSIP, is part of the Council's policy framework. I think it's the first time the BSIP has actually come to council, so some people might be surprised to see it. But the BSIP is a public document and is published on our website, so if people haven't got the council papers in front of them, they can go to our website to look at it. But when we submitted it, we warned it was a live document. In fact, I think it says it several times. And it was already started to evolve as more information becomes available. The main change from the earlier BSIP is to allocate 480,000 of the funding to support the new dynamic demand responsive transport service. That rolls off the tongue. Between 2025 and 2027. And you'll see that much of the capital for that comes from the Luff project. It also sets out our vision and how we wish to move forward from 2025 to 29. Most of you in this room will either have been involved with the earlier version or heard of the plans at scrutiny, so I would prefer to answer questions, if I can, than go through the BSIP in detail. It's probably one of the shortest documents we had to read for this meeting, so I expect you'll skip to the end in joy. So I'll sit down now and we'll wait questions.
Thank you, Councillor Wise. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Waller. I will now open up for debate, please. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate this is a sort of an evolving document, but note that the strategy in the east of the county, there are no changes in the document to the existing services that are currently provided. There is also a comment that this area of the county has access to demand responsive transport. This mode of transport, although accessible, is not well used because it frequently cancels at the last minute or just doesn't turn up. And honestly, this is not good if you have a long-awaited hospital appointment, a job interview or whatever else. Residents tell me they don't trust this service because it's unreliable, and I know this point was fed back in the residents' workshops that took place. Please, what assurance could the portfolio give me that these problems will be addressed and managed going forward, and that a reliable and trustworthy DRT service will be provided to underpin this strategy and make the most of the service available for residents in the east of Rutland? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Wise, would you like to come back?
The bus service improvement plan in front of you here doesn't contain all the details of the contracts that will be on the demand responsive transport. It is my belief that we won't have the same contract as we currently have with Call Connect, and I strongly suggest that there may be some clauses in any contract that is drawn up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Think Councillor Stevenson and then Councillor Payne.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, and thank you for the clarification about how we find ourselves as a council approving adoption of something that's already been submitted. Some of these queries I'm not expecting to be answered live on the night because I know that this has been a long time coming. You rightly point out it has had various portfolio holders' hands on it, not least mine with Moving Rutland Forward, Local Transport Plan 4, not easy to say. My question, though, is I think does this mean that the document can actually be altered live and evolve? Because I think some of the points I'm going to make absolutely need to be able to be slightly tweaked so that they're clearer. And presumably that can then go on to the DFT, because I do appreciate the tight timelines. Couple of queries in no particular order. It's very fortuitous that Councillor Powell asked the question about parking, which we've had one answer telling us it's about sorting out or supporting our stretched budget, and yet in the BSIP it suggests that that isn't quite the case, and I quote, "Parking charges set with the consideration of the need to discourage car dependency." I would suggest that's a little bit harsh for a rural area. It's not as though we're in London where we could get the tube or the underground. We appear to be penalising drivers before there's a reasonable, equitable alternative. And my other concern is that potentially really damages our high street footfall. I'm sure it won't, because we've got brilliant high streets with great shops, but I do feel that that's made me a little bit twitchy. The next one that I want to pick up is on, it's page 16 of the BSIP, 694 of the council papers, a very, very laudable, aspirational paragraph. "The new arrangements will ensure that people can travel to key destinations for work, health, education, training, leisure, shopping." I won't reread the whole lot. Really laudable. When I then look through at the tables, the overview table, and I'll come to their labelling in a second, I don't quite see the deliverability. So, for example, we're offering residents free fares during December 2024, but after 9:30, we definitely have people who need to get to work before 9:30. So that's something, if that could be looked at. The other thing as well with the overview table, improvement programme to 2025, I think that means 24-25, and then the next one is actually 25-26. We've got a promise to residents that all residents will have free transport from 2024. The impression given in those two tables, my question is that just the demand responsive offer? Is that the other bus services? We've then got schemes 5 and 6, and I will send you an email afterwards, Councillor Wise. Schemes 5 and 6, we've got low next to the costing accuracy. Does that mean that they're actually sort of fingers in the air costings? And I'll find the exact reference. Scheme, it's around the lower and simpler fares. Scheme 5, continue free fares on the DRT service, linking into my question about free transport for all residents. Is that just DRT? Continue free travel for young people. So we've got 100k, 40k, and it says costing accuracy rating is low. And then there's a high, and I don't know if low means we're not sure at all, or do you see? So that's one to take away. And generally, as I say, I sympathise with staff change. I sympathise with the
30 seconds to wrap up,
Oh,
please.
I will wrap up with the DFT. And I'm supporting this, to be really, really clear, but I am concerned that the narrative, shall we say, doesn't match up with the figures. I'm concerned about the deliverability, and if we're reliant on the Moby Hub delivering a lot of the DRT, September 25 may be a little bit challenging, considering we need planning, procurement, and the joys of the governance process.
Thank you. You are finished now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Powell.
Thank you. Yes, generally, as it is, as you've mentioned, Councillor Wise has mentioned, this is a refresh, so I think we would definitely support the aspirations and the sentiments in this bus service improvement plan. Less car use, but an important feature of social mobility, and for residents to be able to get around in a rural area with people who can't drive, who haven't got access to cars. So, and to discourage car use for an environmental point of view, they're all sort of good aspirations. And I think it maybe doesn't come out particularly strongly in this paper. One of the key struggles, as I'm sure my fellow councillors agrees, is for people to access health services, particularly those that are out of, well, all our main hospitals are out of county. So I'd like to see a bit more joining up of the dots on that in terms of, you know, proposed services and how that can be explored. But we all know the challenges of running bus services in rural areas with the disparate places that people are looking to be, get on a bus and get off a bus is a very tricky conundrum to solve. So I appreciate that, but certainly the health aspects I'd like to see a bit further explored. I was a bit puzzled again by the deliverability, certainly not repeating what Councillor Stevenson said, but actually we knew we had to do this in January, and appreciate that, you know, the issues of staffing. But I think if we have something like this that we need to actually put in order to secure the funding, which has now sort of been released, I'm concerned that we need these are the priorities that we need to meet. The one specific question is the delivery. Is the delivery targets in the last section, and maybe that's something that can be reviewed. Are they dependent on the LUF funding and the Moby Hub, or are we able to deliver those even if there are further delays on the delivery of the Levelling Up Fund projects? Thank you.
Thank you. I will let you come back at the end and probably give you a little bit of extra time. I'm aware you're getting a lot of questions coming your way. Councillor Heckles, you were next.
Hello. I have a question on page 683. You're talking about the monitoring of progress. You're saying that the 2022 figures, 21-22 figures provide the baseline, but we haven't actually been provided with those figures. And also I do sort of feel that if you use 21-22 figures, that's going to be leading to a slightly inflated picture, as obviously this is a year after COVID lockdown. So a lot of people were still working from home and they weren't using the bus service. I think it would be slightly more representative if you used the 23-24 figures.
Thank you, Councillor Heckles. Any other debate? Anyone else would like to speak on this before I bring Councillor Wise back in for her right of reply? You're up, Councillor Wise.
I'm up. Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Stevenson said, there were a lot of questions and I can't answer all of them. Some of them I need to go back to officers on. And some of them need a bit of detailed checking. I think I would like to start by saying I think this accepts, certainly I accept, we're not going to replace all car journeys with buses. That's just not going to happen. What we do have to remember is we have a large number of people in our county who don't have access to a car. They might have moved somewhere when they could drive. They can't any longer. And we need to find a way of getting them to health appointments in particular, which aren't next door to where they live. So this service has to work in that way for these people. We have to make sure it works in this way for those people. The developments are dependent on the buses bought with the LUF funding. If the Moby Hub isn't ready, I believe we can still go ahead with the beginnings of the transformation. So it is the buses, not the building. It would be the icing on the cake if it all came together. And I'll tell you what, you won't need to cut the ribbon. I'll be leaping over it if we manage that. But we're not letting the building stop us putting this into place. I've forgotten your question, Councillor. Please. The 2024, yeah, thank you. What we know of the numbers so far is there wasn't a huge ping back after COVID, and in fact the progression has been very, very slow. What there has been most increase in is people who have bus passes. So I suspect in a lot of cases they are people who don't have any other means of transport. So it is the people going into work that we need to try and attract. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wise. So the motion is that Council approves the recommendations set out in section 1.2 of report number 103/2024. So I'll ask all those in favour, please raise your hands.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. The motion is approved. So we come to item 16, which is any urgent business. I've not been made aware of any urgent business for consideration, and I can say that the next meeting of Council is on Thursday, the 21st of November. So that concludes the business for the meeting, and thank you, members. I declare that the meeting is closed at 8:31. Thank you very much, members.